So today we're back with a small Final Fantasy news roundup where we take a look at an interview with Final Fantasy VII Rebirth co-director Motomo Toriyama, where he talks about the work that went into Rebirth's massive soundtrack and some of the award hopes he has for Part 3. We also take a look at an interview with the producer of Dissidia Duellum, as it looks like the game could be heading to PC. So let's talk about it. Alright, so before we get to the Final Fantasy news, if you guys have been keeping up with the posts section on my YouTube page, you guys will know that a video I uploaded a few weeks ago where we talked about some of the upgrades that Final Fantasy VII Rebirth was receiving on the PS5 Pro, as well as the Final Fantasy IX anime. We also talked about the DLSS 5 situation, and in that video, I happened to use footage from NVIDIA that was showcasing this new technology. Well, over the weekend, that video was hit with a copyright claim, but not from NVIDIA. Instead, it was from some random news station in Italy. They went by the name LA7. And according to them, they owned this footage from NVIDIA, which is absolutely absurd. I was super confused. I'm like, this makes no sense at all. What the heck is going on? So I submitted a dispute for the claim. I made a post letting everyone know, like, hey, this video is currently blocked in over 200 countries. If you were looking for it, you didn't get a chance to watch it, you were unable to because it was blocked. And the revenue was also in escrow, so no one could get their hands on anything. Well, when I made that post, a few of you responded saying it looks like a lot of people are going through this same situation. I guess people on Reddit were posting about this copyright claim, and I happened to run into an article just a few hours ago from Tom's Hardware where it looks like, yeah, every single video that used this footage was hit with a copyright claim from that Italian news network. So it was a mass claim that went out. And Tom's Hardware speculated that maybe there was an overzealous intern at this Italian news station that just put out a copyright claim en masse. The YouTube AI copyright system, which is so horribly busted and broken, saw that and just flagged every video and took it down, which again is a really huge issue with YouTube. When it comes to this type of stuff, I get that it's probably not possible to have a human look over everything, but the fact that anyone can just issue a copyright claim without providing proof that they own said footage or music or what have you is really broken. And this is something that's been happening for years on YouTube, where you have a lot of bad actors who will report someone's video, put out a claim and say, yeah, that footage that you're using, that music you're using, that's actually mine. And they don't have to provide any proof unless you escalate things further. But should you escalate things further, you risk receiving a strike on your own channel. So the whole situation really sucks. The system needs fixing. But all that to say, this morning I received an email that let me know that my dispute went through and the claim was lifted. So if you didn't get a chance to watch that video, it's now back up. So that was a headache to deal with. But thankfully, it's been dealt with. I hope it doesn't happen again, because this whole entire thing is just one massive headache, and you got to jump through so many hoops to try and figure out what the heck is going on. And the fact that anyone can just be like, yeah, that's mine, when it's not actually theirs, and they can just take your revenue or block your video, really sucks. Anyway, my personal issues aside, let's go ahead and move over to that interview with Motomo Toriyama. This actually comes to us from a bigger interview that was posted on the Square Enix music page over on YouTube. And it features Motomo Toriyama, who is the co-director of Rebirth as well as Part 3, Keiji Kawamori, who is the music supervisor for Rebirth, and Makoto Ise, who is the sound director for Rebirth. Now, I had planned to do a full-on reaction to this interview because I love the music of Rebirth, and I just love hearing more about how it comes to be, how they crafted it, why they chose specific things. But unfortunately for me, the entire interview is in Japanese and they don't provide English subtitles. You can get English subtitles, but they're auto-generated and they're not very accurate. For example, they refer to Rebirth as a film instead of a game. So I didn't want to cover the video without having the proper translations. I didn't want anything to get misconstrued or, be kind of wonky. But thankfully, we have a few translations that come to us from Genki over on Twitter, so massive thank you to Genki for translating a few of the quotes from Toriyama. Starting off first with the fact that Remake and Rebirth unfortunately didn't win any Game of the Year awards. Genki goes on to write, FF7 Remake series co-director Motomo Toriyama says since Remake won Best Score at the Game Awards, but didn't win any other game-related awards, he was hoping Rebirth would win some game-related awards at the show. He says he was very confident in the game, and the team watched the Game Awards live in the morning, but as the show went on, they were unable to win any game-related awards. So in the end, they were just super happy to win Best Score once again. He says on the other hand, since Remake and Rebirth won Best Score, then they have to win Best Score for Part 3 as well. So, if I'm not mistaken, I do think that Remake actually did win Best RPG at the Game Awards the year it released. It was nominated for Game of the Year, unfortunately did not win. It did win Best Score, which is great. Soundtracks in these games are phenomenal. As for Rebirth, that only won Best Score at the Game Awards. It didn't even get Best RPG. That honor would go to Metaphor ReFantasio, which I haven't played, so I can't really judge it. I know a lot of people seem to really like that game. But for me, I'm like, if Rebirth doesn't win Game of the Year, I hope it at least pulls Best RPG, because it really is just such a phenomenal RPG from top to bottom. And it sucks that it didn't win. But you know, the way I look at the Game Awards is it's just super cool to get these games nominated, because it really does have an effect on how well these games do. I believe it was the year that Rebirth was nominated, there were some sales data that was pulled out that showcased that games like Rebirth, Silent Hill 2, Astrobot, basically all the games that got nominated for Game of the Year that year at the Game Awards all received sales boosts. So while it would have been nice to see Rebirth win, the fact that it was nominated and acknowledged and got way more eyes on it, and that increased the sales, super cool. Also, that same show, they announced Rebirth for PC, so Rebirth has seemingly really kind of found its legs and started to perform better. And now with the entire franchise, potentially barring Part 3. Again, we still don't know the status of Part 3's exclusivity, but with Remake and Rebirth going multi-platform, super cool. More people are getting to experience it. But it's pretty much a given that if Final Fantasy is nominated in a Best Soundtrack Award, it's probably gonna win. Everyone acknowledges how amazing the music in these games are, and not to discredit any other games that get nominated in the same category, but the amount of work that goes into crafting a soundtrack, not just for this entire trilogy, but for each game, is something we're going to learn a little bit more about in the upcoming quote from Toriyama. But I can see that there's also that pressure there, because when, you know, the Game Awards comes around next year, assuming Part 3 releases next year, there's going to be that pressure of, okay, we won 2 Best Soundtrack Awards for Part 1 and 2, we got to do it for Part 3 to complete the trifecta. And hopefully that's also the year that maybe Part 3 is hopefully good enough to not only get nominated for Game of the Year, but maybe take the big one. It'd be really nice to see that, should the game, you know, be really good. But again, in the end, just being nominated is super cool, and in the grand scheme of things, whatever your Game of the Year was, that's what matters most. Regardless of if it was nominated or it won, if you can find that game that you click with on all levels and it just hits you like a truck, that's why we play games. So there's a positive side to it. Up next, Toriyama talks more about how they crafted such a large soundtrack for Rebirth and how much care went into it. So Genki goes on to write, Motomo Toriyama says their goal for Rebirth's soundtrack was to create an individual piece of music, not only for every cutscene, but for each gameplay scenario and boss battle as well. Expanding on what they did in Remake, they decided on the concept to match the music to the visuals for everything, and in the end, they created about 600 tracks of music in the game. 600 tracks is absolutely absurd. And truthfully, I don't think there's a bad one in the bunch. And I've mentioned this in previous videos, but the composers who work on the Remake trilogy, as well as people like Motomo Toriyama who are involved in handpicking these songs and trying to figure out what goes best with a scene or a battle, they have the unenviable task of taking these classic works of music that were composed by a legend in Uematsu-san and find a way to rearrange them, but still keep the essence, the quality of what he crafted nearly 30 years ago. That is a tall order. And if you ask me, they succeeded. To be able to take those tracks and reimagine them and still have them sound great, like the boss battle theme, for example. It sounds great in the original game, and then you hear like that heavy metal rock version in Remake when you fight the Airbuster. I got so pumped. So I'm glad they were able to keep the essence of what those tracks were and just kind of update them and make them fit for the Remake trilogy in a way that I thought was still very respectful of the work that Uematsu did all those years ago, while also kind of putting their own stamp on things. They also had the difficult task of having to come up with new songs that could stand alongside what Uematsu-san did, and I also think they were incredibly successful in that front. There are a number of tracks from Remake and Rebirth that were brand new that still stick with me to this day. I absolutely love the Valkyrie theme. It's such a big, sweeping boss battle theme that has this heroic section towards the end, which, when it's played with the gameplay, the way it's dynamically synced up, and you're just hitting your synergy moves, you're blocking perfectly, you're dodging, you feel like a superhero. There's the Collapsed Expressway theme from 7 Remake where Cloud and Aerith are making their way to Wall Market, and it's this really kind of out of nowhere beautiful theme that, funny enough, kind of matches the area that it's in, because even though it's a collapsed expressway, it still kind of has this like special glow and atmosphere to the environment that you're in. It's all covered in the moonlight. It's really cool. There's the Ghoul theme that plays in 7 Remake when you're fighting the Ghoul monster in the train station at the train graveyard. You also hear it again in some of the VR boss battles with the summons. I forget the name of the track, but I think the first time you hear it in 7 Remake is when Tifa and Barret have gotten separated from Cloud after the plate has fallen, and they're fighting all of those weird Hojo experiments. I can't remember the name of that track, but oh man, does that track just hit super hard. And it fits that scenario. You feel so cool getting to go through with Tifa and Barret and just seeing them team up, hearing the banter. It's such a badass moment within that game. But this also, to me, just shows how much love and care and seriousness has been put into the Remake project. And again, there are the people that don't like it, which is fine, but I genuinely love what they've done with Remake and Rebirth, and this is coming from someone who grew up playing the original FF7 when it released. And for them to be like, okay, we want to have individual tracks for all these specific key moments within the game, whether they're big cutscenes and boss battles, or small things like mini games, or escorting a dog. Oh, you got to take a dog from point A to point B. You can bet your ass we're going to craft 2 songs for that specific scenario. Oh, you're going to ride the buggy around the Corel Desert? We got this banging country track that's going to play as you're driving around. Are you confused by the ending of Rebirth? Not sure what's real, what's fake? Is this a real Aerith? Well, we're going to craft music that layers character themes and enemy themes, and then we're going to light it in a way that makes you question, is this really Aerith? The amount of work, the amount of storytelling that has gone into the composition of these songs and to make sure that they perfectly accentuate the scenes that we're seeing, the story that is being told, the incredible boss encounters that we get to play is insane work. It truly, in my opinion, is reminiscent of the old Squaresoft era. So it's really some magical stuff. And that makes me super excited for part 3 because there are still so many cool story moments that can happen, but there are a ton of music tracks that we have yet to hear. And I've just been thinking more and more about the potential opening of part 3 and how Hamaguchi, in that Automaton interview we covered weeks ago said, yeah, it's going to open up with the Great Glacier area, the Northern Crater. I'm like, sick, but also, we're going to lose Cloud that early? So you guys have put this in the comments. I think I even mentioned this in one of the community comments video I did, last year. But I could totally see part 3 opening up with the intention of the crew, the party, wanting to go to the Northern Crater because that's where Sephiroth is. But perhaps when you approach that area, maybe the storms are just too strong. Maybe that whirlwind maze is pushing wind out super, super far. and it's just too much for the tiny Bronco to weather. So Cid's like, look, all right, if we're gonna make it through this, we're gonna have to make some adjustments. We're gonna make a beeline back to Rocket Town. I'm gonna fix up this puppy, and then we can get back to the Northern Crater. You head back to Rocket Town. You get the backstory of Cid, Shara, the Shinra space program. Cid's in the middle of making adjustments to the Bronco. Rufus shows up and is like, hey, I want that tiny Bronco. I need it. Cid's like, you're not taking this. The shenanigans ensue. Palmer gets hit by the truck. You take off in the tiny Bronco. You're in the ocean. And where do you go next? Wutai. So maybe that's what happens at the beginning. It'd be a really cool action-packed way to open up the game. You get some more of the linear stuff by heading back to Rocket Town, but then you're kind of set off in a semi-linear area with the Bronco where you can go to Wutai. So a lot of cool stuff there. But 600 tracks of music, again, not a bad song in the bunch, and the amount of care put into making sure that they crafted these songs to match everything that they've been paired up with is some incredibly stupendous work, and I'm at least happy that they won Best Soundtrack, because I do think that if there's one thing people can acknowledge is that these Final Fantasy games always have incredible music. And to be fair, the more I learn about the Game Awards, the Jeff Keighley ones, the more I start to learn like, oh, it's actually just a popularity vote. There was a really wonderful video put out last year by Alana Pierce where she deep dived into how exactly the Game Awards nominate games and vote on them. And it's not like the BAFTAs where there's an actual committee of people that communicate with one another and have actually played all the games and heard the performances and know these, games that are nominated like the back of their hand. For the Game Awards, they just essentially contact a bunch of outlets and YouTube channels and be like, hey, what games do you like? And the games that get mentioned the most get nominated. The games that receive the most votes from those people end up winning. So it is a popularity contest, but it's nice to sometimes just feel wanted and popular. So big ups to Toriyama, Keiji Kawamori, and Makoto Issei, and everyone who works on these games and finds a way to craft these songs, rearrange the classics, and figure out how to best use them to where they best serve the story. And that's not easy to do. And finally, we move on to the Dissidia Duellum news. This is coming to us from Jenny Latta of Silicon Era, where she sat down with the producer of Duellum, Naoya Matsumoto, talking about the possibility of the game going to PC. And Jenny would ask them first, this is a smartphone game. Why go with the vertical screen? So Matsumoto would go on to say, we chose the vertical screen so that players can comfortably enjoy not only the gameplay, but also the communication aspects of the game. This constraint does not make a PC version impossible. While we cannot provide specific details at this time, we are currently exploring the possibility of a PC version. Matsumoto also mentions that one of the reasons they went with that portrait view is to allow for easier gameplay. You can play the game with one hand, swipe up on your abilities. It's super easy to pick up and play. I did an impressions video of Dissidia Duellum, I think last week, maybe the week before. Overall, I think the gameplay loop, super fun. Some of the drawbacks for me were the controls. The vertical screen makes it kind of hard to see things. You do have a mini map on the top of the screen, but there's so much going on at any given time. It's kind of hard to focus on the map, where your team is at, where the enemy team is at, where the boss is at. It's a lot to keep up with. I also mentioned that one of my biggest concerns that I thought would rear its head sooner rather than later was the whole pay-to-win aspect of the game and how it feels really unbalanced when you do the ranked stuff. Unfortunately, that came to fruition. And what I've learned so far with Duellum is that rank really means nothing in this game. All that rank is a signifier of is how many battles you've won, how many matches you've won, essentially. So rank doesn't seem to, at least from my experience, take into consideration how powerful a character might be. Because you might have someone who is your same rank, maybe a rank above you or a rank below you, but their characters are like 5 times more powerful than what you're currently working with. And I've had multiple situations where I've been at full health and I've been hit with an ability from another player that, no joke, takes away a little bit more than 80% of my health. I've even been one-shotted by Terra's Riot Blade countless times. I have nightmares about it. So that aspect, unfortunately, has reared its head, and it's just not as fun to do ranked. So what I find myself doing is maybe once or twice a week I'll do a ranked match, but for the most part I'm doing the solo offline challenges and maybe some casual stuff here and there where it's a little bit more laid back. But jumping into a match of rank and getting hit and obliterated in like 1 or 2 hits and then losing the match and seeing my rank go down. Not very fun. But again, getting back to the fact that this could be eventually released on PC, I think is the right move. I think playing this game in a landscape 16:9 aspect ratio with controller support would be the best way to experience this game. Now, it shouldn't be too difficult to figure out a PC port of this game. Granted, I'm not a developer, but again, you're essentially just changing the aspect ratio, which shouldn't affect the gameplay too much. And the game already supports controller play on the smartphones or on a tablet. So I don't think it would really have to rework too much. Maybe some UI stuff would have to be shifted around, because again, if there's one thing that, the game does really well, it is that UI. It truly feels like I booted up a Final Fantasy social media app where I can see the characters interact with one another in chat. The people that I've followed and have followed me, I can see that their messages are being sent very much like a group text style. So the UI is very much in the style of using social media on a smartphone. It's actually very well done. So maybe they could leave that as is. Maybe they would just have to rearrange things to fit that 16:9 aspect ratio, but it shouldn't be too difficult to figure out a PC port. And I think if you do port it to PC, you would open up the player base by probably a lot. But again, the bigger issues with that game really is the whole like pay to win, the fact that you're randomly drawing stuff, running into players who are very powerful. It's kind of really unbalanced right now, and I don't really quite know how you fix that. Aside from nerfing certain abilities and the amount of damage they do, maybe changing the cooldown times, there's a lot that goes into balancing competitive multiplayer games. But with that being said, that is the video. Let me know in the comments down below what you guys thought of what we covered in today's video, some of the remarks from Toriyama in regards to the soundtrack of Remake and Rebirth. And also, if you're someone who is playing Dissidia Duellum, what are you thinking so far of the game? Are you holding out for a PC version? And should the game go to PC, would that actually encourage you to want to play it? I am Curious Corduroy. I will see you guys in the next video. Please remember to always be excellent to one another.